Imagine calling police because you haven't heard from your family. You expect officers to knock on a door, check the house, and maybe discover that everything is completely fine. But in Litchfield Park, Arizona, that welfare check led investigators somewhere no one expected. A home where 3 adults were supposed to be. A house where police say they found evidence of foul play. And then, buried in the backyard, human remains. Not one set. 2. And suddenly, what began as a missing person investigation became a homicide investigation. But here's the most disturbing part. One of the missing family members was their own adult son. And investigators now believe that son may have already fled the country. His name is Matthew Flores. He's 27 years old. And authorities are now searching for him. But there is still one enormous question. Who are the 2 people found buried behind that house? And what happened inside that home before police arrived? The story begins in Litchfield Park, Arizona, a community in the West Valley area near Phoenix. On Tuesday, August 4, 2026, a family member became concerned about a husband, a wife and their adult son. Something wasn't right. The family wasn't responding. So a welfare check was requested. At that point, police were not walking into a confirmed murder investigation. They were responding to concern over missing people. 3 adults. 1 home. And no clear explanation for where they had gone. But when officers entered the residence, the situation immediately became more serious. Police say they discovered a large amount of blood inside the home. And there were signs that someone may have attempted to clean up or cover up what had happened. That changed everything, because when 3 people who are expected to be inside a home are suddenly missing, and investigators find blood evidence, they have to consider the possibility that something violent happened. And that's exactly what happened here. The missing person investigation was turning into something much darker. Then investigators searched the property. And what they discovered in the backyard would push the case into homicide territory. Human remains were found buried underground. But investigators didn't stop there. A second set of remains was also discovered. 2 bodies, buried in the backyard of the same home connected to the disappearance of 3 adults. And at that moment, investigators were faced with an extraordinary question: were these the missing people? Police have not publicly confirmed the identities of the remains. Reports say the ages associated with the remains are consistent with the missing homeowners, but official identification and the cause of death still had to be established. So we need to be very careful here. The remains have not been publicly confirmed as belonging to specific family members. And that distinction matters. Because in a developing homicide investigation, what police suspect and what forensic testing officially proves are not always the same thing. But there was enough evidence for authorities to treat this as a homicide investigation. And then investigators began looking at the 3rd missing family member. Matthew Flores. Matthew Flores is 27 years old. According to authorities, he is now considered a suspect in the investigation, and investigators believe he may have left the United States. That turned the case from a local investigation into a search that could cross international borders. The FBI and U.S. Marshals have been assisting with the investigation. But there is another unsettling detail. If investigators believe Flores left the country before police conducted the welfare check, then the question becomes, when did he leave? And where did he go? At this point, authorities have not publicly established every detail of his movements. They have not publicly explained exactly what happened inside the home, and they have not publicly confirmed the identities of the remains. Those answers may depend on forensic examination and the continuing investigation. But investigators clearly believe there is enough evidence to search for Flores. Now think about the timeline. A family member becomes concerned. A welfare check is requested. Police arrive. 3 people are missing. Blood is discovered inside the home. Investigators begin looking for evidence of foul play. Then human remains are discovered underground. And suddenly, the backyard itself becomes a crime scene. Police brought in equipment to recover the remains. The bodies were reportedly decomposed, making identification more difficult. And every discovery creates another question. How long had they been there? When were they buried? Who buried them? And why? Those are exactly the questions investigators now have to answer. But perhaps the biggest question is even simpler: what happened to the 3 people who were supposed to be living in that home? There is another detail that has drawn attention. According to reports, neighbors described the area as normally quiet. That makes the discovery even more shocking for people living nearby. Because from the outside, the neighborhood didn't look like the setting of an unfolding homicide investigation. There were homes, streets, families, ordinary daily life. And behind one residence, investigators were digging for human remains. That's one of the most unsettling realities of cases like this. Sometimes the most disturbing evidence isn't discovered in an abandoned building or a remote location. Sometimes it's found in a place that looks completely ordinary. A backyard. A garage. A bedroom. A home where neighbors may have walked past for years without ever imagining what could be happening inside. And then investigators had another problem. The suspect was potentially gone. Authorities believe Matthew Flores may have fled the country. That means investigators aren't simply trying to reconstruct what happened at the house. They're also trying to determine where Flores could have gone. International travel. Border crossings. Possible destinations. Financial activity. Communications. Every piece of information can potentially help investigators establish a timeline. But until Flores is located and investigators can question him or gather additional evidence, many of the most important questions remain unanswered. And there is a danger here. The internet is already full of theories. People naturally want to know what happened. They want names. They want motives. They want an explanation. But investigators haven't publicly established all of those answers yet. So at this stage, we should separate what is known from what is suspected. What is known? Police conducted a welfare check after concerns about 3 adults. What is known? Authorities found evidence of blood and signs of possible foul play inside the home. What is known? 2 sets of human remains were found buried in the backyard. What is known? The case is being investigated as a homicide. What is known? 27-year-old Matthew Flores is a suspect. And authorities believe he may have fled the country. But what remains unknown? The identities of the remains. The exact cause and manner of death. The precise sequence of events inside the house. The motive. And perhaps most importantly, where Matthew Flores is now. Those unanswered questions are what make this investigation so significant. And there is one more question that investigators may eventually have to answer. If 2 people were buried in that backyard, when did the burial happen? Was it days ago? Weeks ago? Longer? What evidence can investigators recover from the property? Were there witnesses? Were there cameras? Did anyone see unusual activity? Did anyone hear something? Did anyone notice a vehicle? Sometimes the smallest detail can become the missing piece in a homicide investigation.